Welcome back to Rewind of the Living Dead. I'm Damon Martin.
And I'm Payman Guerra. Patrick Guerra, that is. Oh,
Yeah.
yes, Damon. Tonight, funny, weird, different stuff from us. A two-parter.
First time, I think, besides doing Stranger Things season 4, part 1 and part 2.
Yeah,
Like, months
they left
apart.
us no choice.
Yeah, that came months apart though. This is actually doing a two-part episode. They will obviously be self-contained episodes, but two parts because I can't remember. Obviously we've done remakes on this show. We've done originals, we've done remakes. We've talked about those a lot. Actually, we just did a remake recently with the Crazies. Um, this is probably one of the most unique remakes, originals leading into a remake that we've probably ever tackled on Rewind of the Living Dead. I know it's the first time we've ever done on this show.
I feel like it's the first time this has been done. A quick backstory for anyone who's like, what is The Last Shift and why am I tuning in for this? Well, guess what? Just a few weeks ago, I asked myself, what the hell's The Last Shift? I had never heard of it. But I had heard a lot of a movie that was coming out called Malum. I follow this horror production company called Welcome Villains, and they were promoting the hell out of this movie Malum, and I was like, well, okay, this is coming out, and this is sort of a dry season right now before things ramp up and a bunch of horror movies start getting released again. So I was like, maybe we should check out this Malum film. I do some digging, and I find out it's a remake of a 2014 film called Last Shift. Now I go, that was 9 years ago. We don't typically just remake a movie from 9 years ago unless it was like from a different country, done in a different language and it's just being Americanified for Americans. No, not only is it Damon, not only is Malum remade 9 years later, it's remade by the same exact team, by the same director, by the same co-writer, by a lot of the same people. And I was like, well, shit, that's different. And so I thought, well, we should do this, but what we should probably do first is go back and watch the original. Because, I mean, Damon, tell me you weren't fucking flabbergasted that the same people who made a movie were remaking their own movie.
I was blown away and kind of confused, to be honest. I was
Yeah.
like remake. Listen, we've all lived through the remake era, and we've all lived through. You mentioned it, of course, the Americanization of foreign films, which that could drive me crazy 6 ways to Sunday when we talk about some of the great films that have been remade and butchered. And I'm not saying there haven't been some good ones. I think The Ring is a really 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 good remake.
It's a good one.
There are others, of course, but they're currently remaking one of the best zombie films ever, Train to Busan. They're making an American version of that, and I just shake my head thinking about what they're going to
You
do to
don't
that
need
film.
that.
But typically that's how we see. If you see a film remade within 5 to 10 years, that's why. Generally, that's
Yeah.
why they take a Japanese film or a South Korean film or a European film and they remake it with an American version. That's pretty standard. But listen, I was not familiar with Last Shift. I just wasn't. But I did,
Me
much
neither.
like yourself, hear of Malum. I heard a lot of buzz about Malum, and then I started looking into it, and I was genuinely curious because I said, how exactly do you make a film in 2014, which is that's recent. I mean, that's really recent. I can remember 2014, and
Mm-hmm.
now you're remaking it, and the story is for the largest part going to be similar. So yeah, I was confused as well. I was very confused, and I actually reached out to Luc LeBeau, who is the executive producer from Welcome Villain. He's the guy who's basically in charge of development. And I basically asked him on Twitter. I was just kind of like, why, And so we'll get into a lot more of that. We'll get into a lot more of that in our second episode with Malum, because I don't want to just spend this talking about like why we're doing this. But yeah, so I was genuinely like confused and also really curious because this is something I've just never really seen done before. And so, basically, let me just read you his message first, just so we can get that out of the way. Luc LeBeau, who ended up helping them make Malin, basically said Anthony and Scott, the filmmakers of the original, were unable to tell their full story the first time around. So we worked with them to ensure they could tell the story the way they wanted to with Malum, but in a way that felt new and fresh. It's much different. Okay, now, I'll stop there because we are going to get to Malum in episode 2. Let's focus for now on Last Shift. And I'll be honest with you, Patrick, when I started looking this up, there was actually quite a bit of buzz about this film from 2014. But we weren't doing the show at that point, and while I was a pretty hardcore film viewer at that point, I did not, honestly, did not seek out a ton of horror outside of, the ones that everyone was talking about. So I'll be the first to admit this one slipped under my radar.
Yeah, I would have categorized this back in the day, way back when you and I were kids. We would have called Last Shift like a straight to video. It was something that was very, very low budget, that was kind of put out, and it kind of gained its following just on its own. I don't even believe it had a theatrical release if I remember
No,
reading
right, it was
correctly.
straight to video.
So straight to video at that time probably was going straight to video and like a little bit of streaming, a little bit of video on demand because you're talking 2014 and the model for streaming was a little different back then. It still wasn't quite as refined as it is today. Last Shift today might have gone straight to Netflix, straight to Shudder, straight to Hulu, something like that. Instead, it kind of got buried. It was just in that weird little gray zone in 2014, and so I never heard of it. And so we dive into it today. And by the way, just so everybody knows, since this is a movie from 2014, there's spoilers abound. We're going to just be talking about this movie and how it works. And I don't even believe that it's going to be really a spoiler for part two of this two-parter because they do change. Malum changes a lot of things about this movie. So we're going to talk about Last Shift. Spoilers full. It does open up with this character by the name of Jessica Lauren or Lauren, and she's a first day on the job officer at a decommissioned police station. Easy enough. So she gets the very last shift. Oh, it's right there in the title. The very last shift at a decommissioned police station. Her job that night is super simple. She meets a very irate weirdo cop in the station, and he tells her, just sit tight. If anybody shows up, point him down the street to the new office. You just hold this place out until the hazmat guys come and take away all the evidence from the evidence locker. That's all you got to do here tonight. Okay, rookie? Okay, you got it. Aside from a trepidatious phone call from mom, that's kind of the setup. Like, here, have at it for the evening. Just sit here, hold this fort down. Now, of course, we bought into a horror film. We know shit's about to go down. And it does start to get weird in there. She starts to unlock clues because, hey, you're bored sitting there in the middle of the night. So you start walking around, you're hearing weird noises in this grungy, by the way, shitty old police station. And she starts to discover stuff. And the discovery of that stuff kind of leads to more shit and more shit. And this very minimalist movie, Damon, because it was done for low budget, which I believe was $150,000 if I'm not mistaken. And in 2014, it's actually really hard to make a full feature-length movie with effects, with scares and a cast and everything, and overnight shoots for 150 grand. That's actually super low budget. They managed to make something that surprised me, Damon. What about you? What was your first impressions of this very simple setup and this very simply executed movie?
Well, so first off, let me say, and I think I've said it on this show before many, many times, I am a big, big fan of isolated horror films. I love, those films that all take place inside of one place. Like, I'm a huge, huge fan of John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness, which is all takes place in a church, and it's just a very self-contained horror film in that place. I love those kind of movies. I absolutely, I don't know, I have a weird, like, I don't know if you want to call it a fetish, but I have a weird love for self-contained, horror films. And so this is that. And this is also a film where less is definitely more, where they don't tell you much going in. You really don't know much other than this rookie police officer is sitting in this grungy old decommissioned police station. Which, by the way, they filmed this in a old police station in Florida. But I'll be honest, when I watched this, if I had one early criticism of this film, it looked like they were filming it in like an office building. It didn't look like a police station to me. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but it just didn't feel. It felt
once you said Florida, it made all the sense to me.
It felt like an office building. Now it's a minor, very minor complaint. It's just, again, when you're working with a tiny budget, honestly, I watched this film not knowing anything about it besides the premise, which is the rookie police officer goes to a decommissioned police station and weird shit starts happening. I knew nothing beyond that. I didn't look into anything. I wanted to go in completely fresh. Didn't watch the trailer, nothing. So when I watched it, I was like, "This looks like they're filming it in like an office building, like where you'd have
Yeah.
cubicles set up for an office building." Now I know some police stations kind of do look like that a little bit, but it just didn't feel like a police station. But I found out later on it actually was shot in a police station in Florida. But that's neither here nor there. So that was a little off putting at first, but that's again minor detail. What I liked about this film though was because it was so minimal, you don't know much going in, and everything continues to escalate with each
Hmm.
passing minute. Right away she has a homeless person show up in the police station that she has to deal with, which she was supposed to not have to deal with anything in this police station. It was supposed to be literally like a house sitting job for the night. She's not supposed to really do anything besides tell people go down to the new police station, and any direct calls in, just again direct them to the new police station. She's just babysitting a building for 8 hours, for lack of a better term. First, right off, a homeless guy shows up. He's acting bizarre and weird, and she has to deal with him. And she's also, listen, she's a police officer, but she's still ultimately a woman by herself at this weird abandoned old police station with no one else around. It's very cordoned off. It feels like from the rest of the city or wherever they're at. So that's first off. So that immediately the homeless person coming in, that sets the stage right away for some really bizarre weird things happening. And then a lot of haunted house, in this case haunted police station stories, weird things start to happen. Objects move, doors close, doors open, little things like that. Now that's not exactly reinventing the wheel, but as I know it's not a film you love, but a film that I love, Paranormal Activity. One of the things they do well in that movie is they just use what they have in their surroundings, and they don't try to overdo it. With what I loved about Paranormal Activity is they're like, listen, we got whatever that budget was. I can't remember, it was like $24,000. We don't have any money,
Somewhere around
so
that.
we're gonna work it within the constraints of our micro budget, which is we're going to put flour on the floor, and we're going to shoot in reverse. We're going to reverse the film of footprints coming in the flour. Little things like that work so effectively well in that film because they didn't try to stretch beyond their means. And it felt like Last Ship did exactly that as well. They didn't try to stretch beyond their means and make a film that looked all this much bigger, even though they had no money. They stayed within the constraints of their budget, and a lot of the effects, a lot of the scares, and a lot of the escalating horror in this film worked really well, in my opinion.
It did. And that low budget hits you right over the head, like very first shot. I actually watched it with my wife and she went, uh-oh. Like she kind of could see right away. She's like, this is a very low budget movie. Are we sure about this? And listen, I watch a lot of horror, a lot more watched than we actually talk about on the podcast. And sometimes you bump into some low budget horror and you're like, all right, I'm going to strap in. Well, I know this is going to get rough. But I think what got me about Last Shift was the clue aspect, the mystery aspect. The
Yeah.
first little thing that happens with her, right? So I can't remember if the bum or the locker happens first. I don't quite remember.
I think the locker
But
happens first. Yeah,
I
the
think
locker
I
happens.
think it was the locker because she
Yeah.
kind of hears some rumbling over there, and she goes to check, and sure enough, there is a locker. It's got a number on it. It's very like denoted clearly. Like you should look in this locker. Very like video game clue esque. She opens it up and she sees just at the bottom of this empty locker a tucked away little picture of an officer and a young girl. That young girl very conveniently sort of looked like this officer. I wonder what that could mean. Like that was sort of the first little thing. Like, okay, I see what we're doing here. And then the bum shows up and he starts pissing on the floor, and then he comes back and she has to lock him in the cell. Now when she locks him in the cell, things get real weird. He he seemed to me relatively incoherent. Like I didn't pick up on him as a clue at all. But when they got stuck in that room together, so she tries to put him in holding, and the door closes behind her, and this gag, Damon. Oh, we talked about gags. This one scare gag was so fucking fantastic. She rushes to get the door before it closes shut and locks them both in there. And then all of a sudden there's a flashlight in her face, and you go, okay, now the bum's fucking with her. He's got the flashlight in her face. Well, then the flashlight turns and points at the bum. And you're like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
He's not holding the flashlight. Who's in there? And it's just like that, what you're talking about a little bit earlier, that escalation of like, what is this? What is that? And I skipped over the one thing that made my wife fucking freak the fuck out. When she finds that picture in the locker and then she turns around, all the lockers are open. And my wife just audibly gasped and went,
And
like
that
she hates that
right
shit.
right there is what I'm talking about with using your surroundings when you don't have
Yeah.
paranormal activity. Again, that's exactly what I'm talking about. The lockers are a perfect example of that. Something
Yes.
simple that worked, that's so minor. All you literally are doing is, it's a great video, great shot, great cinematography. Close up on her looking into the locker that you eventually find out was her father's locker in this police station. And then when they pan out, the lockers are open. It's such a simple thing, but it works so
So
well. It
easy.
is such a great, and again, that's what I talk about with the escalating horror. That's such a minor thing. Then when you get in that holding cell, holy shit, does it ratchet up in that moment? And boy, does it! And it is freaky. Listen, I'm not one of these people. Like we can all become victims of jump scares, so to speak, because that's what jump scares are
Yeah.
supposed to do. But when you can do an effective jump scare, also while doing it in the dark with like we talked about a film in The Outwaters, which I'm not going to revisit all the problems I had with that film, but one of my biggest issues with that film was like the weird pin light. They had this like weird
Right.
pin light throughout the entire film where it's like you're following this little tiny dot of a light trying to see what's going on. It bugged the hell out of me for that entire movie. This one is a little handheld flashlight, but it still lights up a big part of the room. Like they're not hiding that you've got a real, like they're not trying to make you believe that you're not looking at a flashlight. But they do it in great. They do it in such a great way because they reverse it on you. You're staring into this bright ass flashlight, not clearly understanding what's going on, and they use it against you. She's not shining
Mm-hmm.
the light around the room. Something else is shining the light around the room, and when you realize it's not the bum, you're like, uh-oh. And then it just goes nuts. And it's, again, using your surroundings very effectively.
And those two particular scenes, I want to like take a little filmmaker tangent side corner for a second because I know there's horror filmmakers that listen to this. I just happened to a few weeks ago be in Texas at South by Southwest, and I bumped into a director you may or may not have heard of named David Blue Garcia. Who directed the Texas Chainsaw remake? We had thoughts on that. Go back and check it out if you want to.
We had
Uh,
thoughts, all right.
but so David and I were talking, and he was talking about lessons he learned while he was shooting it. And he goes, "You got to shoot a lot more POV than you think. A lot more like what the character is actually experiencing." And these two scenes are perfect examples of that. When she walks into that locker room, all the lockers are closed. And you could see it from her angle that everything is nice and closed except for the one that kind of sticks out to her. She investigates it, takes just a second to examine the photo, and as she turns around, they're all open. Great perspective gag, super easy. The flashlight one, I mean, takes perspective to the next level because when she drops that flashlight, oh shit, it's dark in the room with this weird old bum who likes to piss on the floor. That's gross. Okay, now he's got a flashlight in my eyes, and we're looking at it from her perspective, and she can't see much, and that flashlight's kind of shining in our eyes as well. We're trapped in her shoes for a second. And then when that flashlight pans over and points at the bum, you're like, fuck me. Because he put you in the shoes for a second and you thought you knew what you were seeing and they subvert you. And I'm like, oh, these are two perspective 101 gags that totally work in the horror space. And they cost this production nothing. They didn't cost the production a damn thing. They didn't have to dress some guy up in a suit to do that, to pull off the flashlight gag. It's probably just a PA or the director holding a flashlight at the camera and then turning over to their actor who's dressed as the bum. That's it. That cost them nothing. The lockers, Damon, you said it, cost them zero. Zip, nothing. They just had to walk around and open the lockers. Probably took them 30 seconds to get all those lockers open while he set up the camera. I mean, and you got two great effective scares right there. Don't tell me you need a certain budget to do it.
Yeah, it was so well done. And also, one thing I really did like about this film, because again, really you're dealing with one character. You're dealing with Officer Lorne. You know, you're not dealing with any, I mean, there are other characters in
Yeah.
the film, but you're really, so even though this isn't a found footage movie, and it's not at all, I mean, it's shot just like a movie, you are in so much of this film because you are isolated with Officer Lorne, you are seeing so much of this through her eyes. And a lot of the film, late in the film, you get into like these hallucinatory scenes where you're kind of like not sure what you're seeing. And that's a huge part of the ending, which we'll get to later. But what I liked about that was because you're confused right along with her. You're seeing what she's seeing. You're not seeing it like from the outside looking in. You're seeing it in a lot of ways through her eyes. And that was such a, like, again, that is a found footage trick that works so well, and it works so well in the ones that are done really well. Films like Blair Witch Project and Hell House LLC, films like that do allow you to see behind the camera in a found footage film. This is kind of like that, except it's not found footage. You're seeing what she's seeing as Officer Loren, and they do it so effectively because all the little things they do to scare you work really, really well because so many of them are minimal, but they work, but they execute them in such a way that you don't see it necessarily coming. And I really enjoyed that about this film because when I sat down, I had the same reaction as your wife, Patrick. I was like, "Oh boy, we're about to be in for a treat here. This is some straight up like $3 Walmart movie." But it wasn't. It didn't play like that at all. It was actually like
No.
really, really well done. Really, really well shot cinematography wise, and obviously you're more the cinematographer than I am, so I'm very like novice when it comes to that aspect of it. I'm more the writer guy, so the story is kind of like more my thing. But the cinematography in this film was so well executed, and because you were dealing with an isolated, isolated police station, you're just captive in this very claustrophobic situation, going room to room, door to door. It gets very claustrophobic in there, and they use it to great effect.
Yeah, I think Anthony DeBlasi edited the film as well, and he and the cinematographer obviously worked very closely to kind of craft these scenes and do a little with a lot. Another movie, I don't think we talked about it fully, but I think we talked about it when we had David Charbonnier and Justin Powell on. Was The Gin, which was a shot in a 2-bedroom apartment. I mean, they saw your grungy old Florida police station and raised you a 2-bedroom apartment. I mean, they got into a very small space and made it frightening and different and varied and let the dread kind of build. They do it here as well by placing the camera almost behind at 3/4 of our character Jessica, almost to the style. Somebody said this in like in an article or something, almost like a video game. And
Yeah,
again,
it's like a first person shooter almost.
first person shooter. I think of Resident Evil. I think I brought
Right.
up Resident Evil on another show before. Like you're just you kind of are stuck. You are being led by Jessica through this process, and it gets maddening and it gets freaky. Um, Moving on to sort of, because obviously that execution counts for a lot here, and I think that's why we needed to take that moment to emphasize it. But once all the clues start to build up, we have to just get into what the hell is actually happening in this building. And this is where, to me, the movie got a little bit, I guess, maybe a little muddy. And maybe you can help me here because sometimes you pick up details I've missed. But we discover, which is strange, that her father was a police officer in this building and had a run-in with this Manson type family known as the Paymans. That is why that why she's in this building, or was she accidentally in this building? Damon, help me on that.
She was just assigned to this. She did not request this in the beginning because she actually says she was assigned to this building, and it just
Okay,
so
see,
happened to be the one where her father was. And I get the sense, and again, this is not something that's explained. It's just kind of the way they kind of talk about it in the film. But it seems like this is a very small town. This isn't like you were dealing with like Chicago where there's a police station
right.
every 10th block. This feels like they're just moving from one police station to the other. So there's only these two buildings. So if she's gonna be babysitting the decommissioned one, this is just the one. So that's kind of the sense I got, and it happens to be the building where her father worked, and also part of the story. Again, there are some confusing elements, I'll be honest, because one thing I did like about this film and the story is early on in the film, Jessica starts getting phone calls to the police station from a girl, trying to escape some sort of kidnapping. You're not really sure what's going on with her, and it just continues to escalate throughout the film. and she keeps getting these calls like, I don't know where I am, I'm trying to get away, and then she hangs up. Then she calls back, and I got away, and I don't know where I'm going. Little things like that. And she's trying to help, and then she's calling the other police station saying, listen, there's this girl calling for help. I thought all the calls were going to be rerouted, and they're like, well, the calls are rerouted. She must be calling directly to your police station. Get her to call 911. So it's just little things like that they do a good job of. But what is kind of weird that you have to almost figure out for yourself throughout this film is the death cult aspect, the Payman family. It's very weirdly kind of spattered throughout this film, and also the connection to her father. You do learn throughout the course of the movie that her father worked on the raid into this compound to like bust this David Koresh style, family, and he lost his life in the line of duty, and that's how he died, was taking down this Payman family. And there's a lot of intercut moments of the Payman family being interrogated at this police station. So a lot of it is like puzzle pieces you're trying to put together throughout the film. Now, by the end, I felt like I got it. I felt like I understood
Yeah.
exactly what was going on. So again, the point was proven. Like, while I was confused at elements during the film, and I was kind of like, what? Like, this is kind of weird, and it didn't really make sense, and this, like, we're kind of like, we're not really putting together a full story here. By the end, I feel like I figured it out, but even me saying I feel like I figured it out, I'm not 100% sure, but I feel like I
Yeah.
figured it out. But again, even that, I will say this, even that, me, the story guy, the guy who needs a plot to need a movie, it didn't really take away from
No.
from the overall enjoyability of this film. Like, even though there were elements where I was kind of like trying to figure out what was going on, there were other things happening around us that still made it enjoyable, if that makes sense. Like, I didn't completely understand the story till right at the end, but everything
Yeah.
up till then was still a lot of fun and scary and haunting and well orchestrated to where it didn't really matter, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I was sort of more on the ride than I was like worried about like connecting all the pieces. It's just a few of those pieces would get confusing, and I go, well, wait, where exactly am I right now? Like for instance, I wasn't sure that the dad died in the raid or if he died in the jail. That it might have just been like a line of dialogue that I missed. Because that can happen. Like sometimes you're just like watching it, and then you're absorbing what just happened, and you kind of miss a little piece of the dialogue that would have been critical to that. But like I wasn't sure because I was like, well, if he died in this station, wouldn't she know? Like wouldn't like it just seemed like. And I do think there was a moment with her and the mom where the mom was like, "You don't. Why are you being a cop?" Which I was like, it's kind of late to say this because you have to go through police academy and all this
Yeah.
shit. So I don't know why her and mom are having this conversation on the very night she is going to start the job. But I was like, okay, that clearly mom doesn't want her to be a cop for some reason. And then I started to put together the pieces with the picture and everything. I was like, oh, that cop was probably her dad. Okay, got it. But it seemed weird to me that at times, like she was acting, and our actress, by the way, is our actor is Juliana Harkavy, right? Am I saying that right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, she plays Jessica, and I at times I wasn't sure if this character like knew what happened to her dad or was completely in the dark about what happened to her dad. That was the thing that kind of got me. I was like I couldn't understand her reaction to the situation, which by the way, a lot of the time when an insane thing would happen in front of her, she'd kind of freak out about it and then turn around and go back to business, like very, very like stoically. And I'm like, is that a move? Like she's insane, and so that was just a moment. She's shaking it off. Like I was confused by not just the performance, but maybe the intention of the performance and the intention of the story. At times, that stuff kind of got to me.
Well, you do, like, where it pays off with that, and well, I totally agree with you. Where it pays off in the end is you do realize that she was hallucinating a lot of this at the end. Like, you don't know what
Yes.
she was seeing. In the big finale, just to get into it again, we're not spoiling. The film's been out for 9 years. Um, you can watch it on Peacock right now. By the way, it's available on Peacock. So
Yep.
you can watch it over there
And on Tubi if you don't have Peacock
on
Premium.
Tubi, and Tubi is free, so you can watch it over there for
Tubi's free.
yeah, so the end, like she basically starts to realize these cult members aren't dead and they're still in the police station. They're haunting her in the police station. They're coming after her, and she
Yeah.
starts
They
walking.
are undead, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, they are undead, but she starts walking through and flat out executing them. Like with her gun out, she's like blasting these people and killing them one by one. And then you find out at the very end she kills the last person, and then she gets shot by the police officer who she relieved of duty earlier in the night. And you realize that she didn't kill the cult members. They were the hazmat team that was coming in to clean out the building, and she was hallucinating all this happening. And so that's our big conclusion, is that she was killing the hazmat team thinking she was seeing these ghost cult members. And I like that twist very much. Maybe it was
I
something
did too.
I should have seen coming. I didn't necessarily see coming, but I was like, oh, that's a really cool twist the way they did it. And when she gets shot, I'm kind of like, oh, what happened? And then you realize, like, you see kind of like the revision of that. And there are other films that do that. And again, you can it can be overdone and it can be done not well. The way they did it in this film actually worked really, really well, because when it happens at the end and it all kind of comes together, you kind of realize that this was all, is this building haunted? Yes, because they revealed during the movie that the cult members didn't all die in this raid. Some of them died in the police station later. That's what like
Yeah.
was hidden and covered up, and you start to put all these pieces together. And there was, if I had one real big complaint, there was a a phone call to the other police station where they just very conveniently like told her everything that happened. Where they're like, "Well, we're not supposed to tell you this, rookie, but here's what happened with this cult, really." And I'm like, okay, now hold on. If this guy knows what happened, how does like everybody not know what happened? It was a little too convenient that they're just like, oh, by the way, here's what actually happened. Like, I feel like it would have been better if she would have found like a file, or, just found the videos or something like that. But it was a little too
Right.
convenient. The cop on the other end of the phone is like, okay, I'm going to tell you the truth. Like, and you're like, hold on. Yeah.
Okay, exposition dump. Here we go.
Yeah, here's what actually happened. I know all about this. I just happen to be the dispatcher on tonight. A little too convenient. But the ending
Yeah.
works really, really well with the whole with her hallucinating, and then you realize like the ghost she was seeing, and you're again by that point when you reach the finale, the conclusion, you're kind of like, oh, what was she seeing? What was in her own head, and what was in her own haunting of like going back to the place that where her father served. And so, yeah, it was really effective in the end, but there were some confusing parts where it felt like they were kind of just throwing things out at us that didn't really fully make sense. But again, when you're dealing with a haunted building and a haunted police station, which is a unique take, by the way. It is what it is. Again, it didn't ruin it for me. There were a couple moments where I was kind of like, huh? But then in
Yeah.
the end, with the whole hallucinatory thing and her, kind of basically losing her mind and then, getting shot and killed at the end, I was like, damn, that was effective. It worked really well at the end.
Yeah, and I do think like whether intentional or not, the ambiguity of the story kind of helped it. Like I didn't know in the end if the hallucination was purely on her part and part of like a trauma that she had suffered, or if indeed the Payman family was like haunting and possessing her from beyond the grave to kind of complete the circle. Because they sort of alluded to needing sacrifice and all that stuff. Excuse me. So, um, I wondered. I was like, well, maybe they kind of there. She came into this haunted place, and again, when we first meet the sergeant that she's relieving, he's all whacked out. He's like angry and he's shouting and he's fucking beating on shit and he's all weirded out for some strange reason that he never quite explains. Um, but yeah, like I go, well, maybe it's what happens if you stay in this place too long because the Paymans are haunting this place, or they have cursed this place, and you will fall under their curse. And she was the perfect like subject to kind of complete the cycle, which is they needed her dead, but for why I don't know. Or was it all just totally in her head and she was dealing with the trauma of her dad dying in this place? Maybe that was it too. Normally I would say that's kind of wishy-washy to not like not necessarily give us an answer, but at least lay a clear foundation for that path. It works here. And the ingenuity of the filmmaking works here. So like you're just kind of like, okay, yeah, this was strung together, but I enjoyed it. I'm not going to pretend like I didn't enjoy this. I liked it. It confused me at times. It confounded me at times. I wasn't super clear at the very end, but I was really satisfied because that ending got me. Like, was she's not shooting the payment fucking family, she's shooting the hazmat guys. Sucks for those guys.
And they set that
I don't
up
know.
well, but they set that up well.
Yeah,
There was numerous calls, like the hazmat guys called her and like, "Hey, we're running late. We're going to be there by 4
yeah,
p.m. We're going to try to get there soon." And she's getting more and more freaked out as the night goes. She's trying to like
yeah, because no one's coming to
and
save
at
her.
one point, a police officer shows up to check on her. She thinks they've been messing with her the whole night. She thinks like it's a rookie hazing kind of thing at one point, which
Mm-hmm.
pays off because if you know, like, if you've ever been around, if you've ever been a freshman at school, or you know how hazing works. This actually, like, they really would have messed with her like that. And then you find
Yeah,
out the police officer that comes to visit her, he's dead, which is a really cool twist. That's a really good one.
yeah,
And then at the end, when you get to the whole like she's shooting the hazmat crew, and you find out that like it's the hazmat crew and not the Payman cult family. Um, the reason why it wraps a bow on everything and works so well is because for the little things that didn't make sense, the little things you're kind of like, why is this happening or why did this happen? It all makes sense because then because again, as we talked about earlier, you're seeing everything mostly through her eyes.
mm-hmm.
But when it gets to the point when you realize she was hallucinating a lot of this, you're like, oh damn, what was she seeing?
Right.
Was she seeing ghosts, or was she just again dealing with the trauma of this being the place where her father worked, and this family he took down and cost him his life? And then you realize like she's just not there. She's just not. She was not right in the head. And so it kind of excuses everything else. And I know that seems like convenient, much like the phone call of the cops saying, "Here, by the way, is all the secrets of this police station." But conveniently, the way they wrap it up at the end, I was kind of like, you know what? This was actually pretty satisfying. Like the fact that now you know that it was maybe all in her head, and none of this actually happened. She was very much just turned schizophrenic in this moment or something. I really enjoyed that. And it was a good, satisfying bow to wrap on the end of this movie.
Yeah, yeah. It was kind of like I was like, how are they going to end this? And when they ended it that way, I was like, okay, I accept. This
Yeah.
works. Like it pulled the rug out from under me in its own special little way, and that makes the last shift like really cool. And I do hope that people go to check this out again. You can watch it for free on Tubi, and if you got Peacock, it's on there as well. Yeah, I highly recommend it because both you and I, it completely went over our heads. We wouldn't know about the last shift at all. And now we're here talking about it, and we're here telling you we're taking our time out of our platform that is Rewind of the Living Dead to tell you to go check it out and tell us what you think about Last Shift.
And I texted this to you last night when I watched the movie the other night, Patrick. I was like, I weirdly like this movie. Like I didn't know if I
Yeah.
would going in because the begin and again I'm not certainly not opposed to low budget horror films. I love low budget horror films. But at the beginning I was kind of like I don't know if this is going to work, and then it
Mm-hmm.
worked. And I was like, "You know what? I was really satisfied by this film." So with that being said, Patrick, let's get into categories because we do have
Let's.
some categories to get into for Last Shift. And because this is ultimately almost like a one woman act, we're not going to do best performance because really we'd be talking about, there's really only one major performance in this film. And yeah, again, it feels kind of cheap to just talk about that. Although I will say, again, for a very, very low budget film, I thought they did pretty good. Juliana Harkavy, I thought she did solid. There's a couple other people in there that did solid jobs as far as like the people who are in the movie. Again, very small cast, talking about maybe like 10 people overall, including the director's wife who played the prostitute, Marigold, and she's actually in the film. So, like, very small cast, kind of like a family crew almost. But again, I
Yeah.
thought that for a small, low budget horror film, thought they did good. But with that being said, let's get into our first category this time, and let's talk about Best Ghoul, because there are a lot of weird, creepy, ghoulish ghosts in this film. So, what was your best ghoul in Last Shift?
Well, my best school in Last Shift comes from you start to see, and I think it started in that lockup scene with the flashlight. There's a great little jump scare where all of a sudden you see these people with like pillowcases over their heads, and their faces have something. There's something strange about what's going on with their face. There's like a weird symbolic pentagram, and the mouths look odd. Like it's freaky. Well, that leads down the line as she's getting haunted and the night is getting worse and worse to the big reveal, which is the Payman family. They are the ones under those bags. They hung themselves there, probably in a ritualistic fashion, in with the intent of, you know, cursing this place so that they could live there kind of forever and control whatever happens in that place. And the big reveal is Papa Payman himself. I forget what I think they call him, John Payman.
John Michael Payman.
John Michael Payman. When
He's a
he
cult leader, so he's
reveals
got to have three names. We got to establish that right off the gate, you know. So
John Michael Payman, and by the way, Payman is an actual real deity from the occult, and so I'm sure that was a that was a inspiration for that name. But when they reveal him, he's got this fantastic scarring along his face that is their symbol that's kind of done in an altered pentagram style, and it's actually on the cover too. You see it, but it looks so much crazier and effective in person that when they reveal the ghoul that himself is John Michael Payman, I was like, damn! Again, for a low budget movie, what they do, they poured the bulk of that money into making that look good, and it does look good. It does not look like a B movie straight to video horror effect. It looks rather clean, and I've seen more money spent on less effective looks than John Michael Payman's Ghoul in Last Shift.
yeah, really, really good. I listen. I love practical effects. I think it's been well documented on this show. Patrick, you and I are both huge fans of practical effects. Whenever it can happen, we prefer them. I think that's safe to say.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, with a budget like this, they're only going to have practical effects, or it's going to look really bad because you are not getting CGI for $150,000 or whatever.
No.
But this one, yeah, it was really good, and that was a good one. And so mine, I was actually originally going to go with the three hanging bodies in the cell because those were really good because when they drop from the ceiling, it's a good moment. But I'm actually going to go with later when Officer Lauren is really starting to like straddle the line between what's real and what's not. And you're trying to figure out what's real and what's not. She walks in and she sees the girl members of this cult all sitting around singing the song, chanting the song that we heard in the trailer, "My Master, My King," is real creepy like cult song. And she looks at them and they all look at her and they're all like normal girls, like, 13, 14, 15 years old. And then they look down, they look back, and they've all got those bags over their heads. Their eyes are all bloody, and the bags are all bloody, like they've been murdered in those bags. And it's just a really effective one. And those ghouls are creepy as hell when they just turn around and look at you, and they all got like different versions of the same look with the bags over their heads, the blood, but some of them have their eyes gouged out. Some of them have the like the top has got blood pouring out of it. The other ones have blood on their front. They're all varying degrees of murder, basically, or sacrifice, if that's what it is. And it's just a really effective moment. And like it's like 9 of them around this semicircle, and they all look up at her, and it's like, oh shit! It's really jarring and really good because they do make them not uniform. They all kind of are uniform because they all have bags over their head and it's bloody, but each one is individually different, and it's a really effective ghoul in that moment. Good ghost scare in that moment.
I really loved that scene. I think that was the scene where I actually put a note in my notes, like damn if this movie doesn't make the most of what it's got.
Yeah.
Like it starts with just those girls in that little circle, and there's a reflection in the mirror, right? So there's this great kind of like, I don't know, like almost a psychedelic vibe because you're seeing the reflection in the two-way one-way window or whatever. So it's kind of eerie the way it looks, and then they just turn the camera just so to misdirect you, and as they turn the camera back, they're all those ghouls. It just, man, I think if you are a burgeoning filmmaker, you need to watch this to see these very effective, very achievable scares. You can see and figure out as a filmmaker how they achieve those things. And you're like, damn, okay, that was a long, hard night, but they did it and it worked. You don't need to overthink it.
There's certain films like this. I mentioned Paranormal Activity. I mentioned Hell House LLC is another one where it's just like just easy little things that you can do without stretching to go beyond yourself, because I think that's a big problem. A lot of the lower budget horror films, they try to do too much with too little. Just like we talked
Mm-hmm.
about with the
Yeah.
gag with the opening of the lockers. It's so minor, but it works. This is minor too. It's just a girls around a circle singing and chanting a song, and they're normal. They're looking at you, and then they turn back around. They turn back, and they've all got these bloody bags on their heads. It's a real easy one to pull off. But the way they do it and the way they shoot it is so well orchestrated. And again, kudos to Anthony DeBlasi because again, less is more, and that's kind of the theme of this entire film, and it works. It works really, really well. Let's talk about the next category, which is best chill, which you put as a different kind of category in here. So, what is best chill, Patrick?
I chose best chill over best scare because there are plenty of like classic scares, but this movie, to me, why it works is it's chilling. A lot of this stuff like just kind of gets you in like, oh shit, okay, that's kind of creepy. There's less need for jump scare in this and more just like, didn't we just get you? Didn't we just fucking get you? Like there's something way more chilling about this than scary. And to me, they both things are equally important and they do them really well. But the one that just blew my mind and might have been my favorite effect in the whole damn movie is something I called the perp walk. Now, very famously, what I think one of my favorite moments of all time in horror is in Nightmare on Elm Street when Nancy goes out into the hall and her friend is being dragged in a body bag and you can't see anybody. And it's just creepy as hell. And then it cuts up close to her and she's talking through the bed. It's one of the best scenes in horror that you'll ever see.
Poor Tina. Poor Tina. She was
Poor Tina after getting fucking whipped around. But I digress. In this movie, um, our Jessica, our officer, is walking down the hall, which they do a great job of making it sort of a labyrinth-esque hallways. Like you never quite know how big this place is, but she keeps walking down this one hall, and eventually she walks down it, and a body is invisibly being dragged. And I was like, oh, cool, they're doing the Nightmare on Elm Street thing. Cool. They take it one step further. Then the body kind of starts to be pulled upright. And then the body starts to very strangely start to walk towards her. And I was like, what? I still don't know how they pulled it off. I kind of almost don't want to know. It's one of my, it's really, really effective and it's super chilling. And my wife is like totally squirming in this moment because she goes, if there's anything that fucks me up, it's people walking weird. Like this thing is walking weird because it looks like it's just hanging in the air and it's like this body is trying to come after her. I was so impressed, Damon, by this moment. Tell me you didn't just go, how the fuck did they do that?
Yeah, that there's a lot of moments in this film where I watched it and I was like, I want to know how they do that. Like that was really well done. Like my only guess is, and again, I'm not a expert filmmaker. My only guess is they did the whole reverse angle thing where they shot it with the standing up and then laying down and then dragging it the other direction and they played it in reverse kind of thing. That's my only guess, but that's just a guess. I have
But even that, but the way it rises up slowly, like it is being pulled up, and you're like,
yeah.
what the fuck?
It's
Super
like
crazy.
it's getting pulled up like it's on hooks, except there are no hooks.
Yes.
It's really really well done. Yeah, that's a good one, and very effectively scary. And also one of the best parts. Again, we talk about best performance. One of the best parts of performance in this film is when she sees that the look on her face of just like, what the fuck, is really really well done. Like that's because again, she's by herself. So much of the performance in this film has to be done through emoting in emotions on your face, not because you're reacting and talking. You have to just react with your with your emotions in that moment. You're not able to just talk to somebody and I'm scared or I'm this or I'm that. She's basically interacting with no one for the biggest part of this film. And so that's a really good one when you see her eyes go wide and she literally has that, like, in the back of her head, she's literally saying, what the fuck?
Yeah. I was too.
So my best chill, I'm glad you didn't. I'm glad you didn't use mine because we talked about it already. But it was the one that really cemented this film for me, and it was early on, and it was that entire scene in the holding cell. That entire scene in the holding cell was so well done because immediately, so at the very beginning, when she drops the homeless guy in there, and then she's got her flashlight, the lights drop, or she's got, and then the door closes, lights drop, she's got the flashlight out, and I'm just like, all right, this is so cheesy, like this is so predictable what they're gonna do
Yeah.
here. and then it wasn't at all. Like, I
Yeah.
thought I knew it was coming, did not see what actually happened. The light back in your face, panning around the room to find out it's not the homeless guy, and then the bodies dropping from the ceiling. Holy shit, that got me. That got me
Mhm.
good. That entire scene, it's like 4 minutes. It's not a short scene. It's a pretty
Yeah.
deep scene of her in that holding cell. It got me. It absolutely, they got me with everything. Because in the beginning, I was like, oh, here we go. This is going to be kind of cheesy. And because that at that point, it really hadn't escalated to the point where I was like, I had made a decision on this movie. I was kind of like, oh man, I don't know. When they got me with the holding cell prank, I was like, done. I like what they're doing with this film.
Yeah, yeah, no, what a gag. What a fantastic gag. And again, I'll reiterate, didn't cost him a dime. That was not a trick. It was literally just like, let's use what we have and show less, by the way. You know what I mean? Like it's literally using the flashlight to actually obscure what I can see, like blinding me a little bit, and then the reveal, whew, I mean, man, masterclass. And it's masterclass done simply. You can recreate this at your house if you'd like to.
Yeah. Let's talk about best gore because for again a low budget horror film, there is quite a bit of gore in this film. So Patrick, what was the best gore in Last Shift?
My best score went to so we talked a little bit about the phone calls that she's receiving, and they're distress calls from a girl named Monica. Well, at some point you put together the idea that Monica is indeed one of the girls that lost her life to the Payman clan. She's kind of calling from beyond, or is she? We don't know. But eventually she manifests herself, and it's actually, it would have been a pretty good chill, as it were, when Officer Jessica's at her desk and shit is really hitting the fan. She looks down and there is Monica, and woo, I mean, what I don't know what they did to her face, but it's crazy looking. It looks weird. It looks like it's been beaten in all different directions, and it's all blue and bruised, and one of the eyes is all fucked up and shit. And you're just like, God damn, that looks fucked up.
Yeah, it was really good. It was really, really well done gore. And again, I like effective practical effects, and that's a really good practical effect. So I went in a slightly different direction because um, so the ending of this film, I really, really enjoyed. I really, really enjoyed the whole ending of this film when she basically goes marching to hunt down the Payman family in the police station, and she basically starts executing them, and they're all walking around with these bags over their heads with these pentagram symbols. So you're not seeing these people, you're just seeing them now. Again, by the end of the film, you realize it's the hazmat crew wearing hazmat suits, but you don't know that in the moment. But when she shoots these people, man, the blood splatter they get from the gun, and everyone's a headshot. I mean, it's all headshots, and it's really well
Yeah.
done. Like the headshot and the splatter on the wall of the blood. It's just great gore. It's great, like, effective gore, and I have to imagine with the effects budget, that's probably where they dumped it all into because you're doing gunshots, you're doing gunfire, and you have to time it and make it look good because you and I both know there's a million versions of a gunshot that can look terrible in a low budget
Hmm.
film. These look good. And I love, by
Yeah.
the way, the way they cheated it. The way they cheated it, yet it still worked, is they used the bags over the head. They didn't have to gore up the head and show the head exploding. It was all contained in the bag. And I was like, damn, that's a great, like, yeah. Does it kind of like, do I recognize right away you did that because you didn't have the budget to show someone's dome getting ripped off by a bullet? Yeah, I understand that. I understand you don't have the budget for that. But the way they did it with the blood splurting out the side and then the people just falling to the side when they get shot was really, really cool. And I just thought it was really good. And the last one, when she shoots the last guy and then he's like begging, begging, and she just executes him and his head, blood splatters.
Yeah.
Really, really good and really, really effective. And again, just bravo to the idea of like, listen, we cannot show 9 people or 6 people, whatever the number is, 4 people getting their heads blown off. We do not have the budget to show 4 people getting their heads blown off. What we do have the budget for, though, are some pillowcases that can go over their faces that just show blood and blood. And it was good. I was like, damn, way to go.
Pillowcases, homemade squibs.
Yeah,
right? Ingenuity. It's just ingenuity in filmmaking, and that stuff that's really inspiring. Like it's inspire. This movie inspires in that respect when you get into all those little things and how they achieve so many of the scares because it's accessible. You go, oh, okay, if I just think my way around this rather than trying to buy my way out of it, I'll get something super effective out of that. So I really appreciate it. And I'll give an honorable mention too to, I think it was Officer Price, who comes to the station to visit her to help out to see what's going on. We heard you need some help here. And when he turns around and it reveals, it's a little bit like the Sixth Sense in
yeah.
that moment where you first realize that someone's not a person but a ghost, and he turns around, he's got a big just gaping shotgun wound in the back of his head. I was like, oh shit, that's pretty cool.
I
And
like
it
that.
looked pretty good too.
That was almost my pick. That was Officer Price turning around and realizing he was dead was really cool. That was a good twist, and I like that one as well. That was
Yeah.
almost my pick, but I loved the just the room to room execution and just the blood splatter. I just thought it was really cool with the gun because gun effects are tough when you have no budget. So I thought that was really cool. All right, so we know this film was made on a micro budget, so we're going to talk now about our favorite or our best no budget horror film. Now, we've talked about low budget horror films before. We've picked some of our favorites. We've reviewed some of them on this show before. Obviously, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of your and my favorite films of all time, and that was a very low budget horror film. But no budget, where you have even less money to work with. Patrick, what is your best no budget horror film, or at least one of your favorite? Well, I'm not going to pigeonhole you say it's
Yeah.
your all time favorite, but what is one? What is the one we're going to talk about today?
I think the one we're talking about today, we did review on the show, and that's Basket Case. When you talk about no budget, I always knew about Basket Case growing up. One of my favorite little VHS tapes to see on the wall at the video store. I didn't realize just how fucking cheap it was. It was made for less than what they made Paranormal Activity for. It was made for $16,000, which is nothing. And it's shot in New York. It's shot like in these room, like they just did it with what they did. By the way, there's plenty of gore in it. There's I think stop motion animation in it.
Oh
Like
yeah,
they made $16,000 stretch so very far. And legend has it that he even flashes a bit of that $16,000 in the actual movie. Like
yeah.
you see some of the actual budget of the film being waved around in the movie. That's how little they had. You could put it in your hand and wave it in front of the camera.
That movie surprised me how much I enjoyed that film when we reviewed it. I was
Yeah.
like, I don't know why this film works, but it does, and it was fun.
Yes.
And it was so goofy and fun. Yeah, that reminded me, like when you hear people talk about when they see Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, and they're like, it's so, like, we know it's not great effects. It's really bad stop motion and, kind of goofy, whatever. And that's kind of the charm of Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. That's kind of how I felt about Basket Case. I was like, yeah, it's not good. Like, it's not good effects, but it's really fun. And
Yeah.
it works. Yeah, I really enjoyed that one. Mine, so normally when we talk about micro budget, my go to is always Blair Witch Project because that's one of my favorite horror films of all time. A film that genuinely scared the piss out of me when I saw it the first time.
Mm-hmm.
But because again, I've mentioned that on the show before, and we're eventually going to get to Blair Witch Project and do it on the show, but I want to go in a different direction to something more recent. We talked last year. One of my top 5 horror films of the year was Terrifier 2. I'm going to go with the first Terrifier. Even though it's not nearly as strong, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say it's good. Terrifier 2 is legitimately a good movie. Terrifier 1 is effects. It's not a story, really. It's just effects.
Yeah.
It's Art the Clown killing people. But for what they had to work with, which was next to nothing, and they did it, and basically all Terrifier 1 was Damien Leon, the director, basically auditioning to do effects. He wanted to make a movie that would see people could see and be like, wow, this guy could do some pretty cool effects for nothing. Let's hire him. That's basically
Mm-hmm.
what that film was. And it was great in that way. I'm not sitting there saying it's a great film, but for having no money and to get some of the effects they do in that film, it's mind blowing. I like to this day, I don't really know how they stretched that budget and they actually made that movie. Again, it's not plot wise, it's not a great movie. I imagine Damien Leon would tell you it's not a plot. They didn't make it to be that kind of movie. It was a movie. It was a movie to show off a guy who could do practical effects. That's what it was, and it works
That's
so
what
well. And it's I mean it's gruesome, and it works really well.
Yeah, you want to talk about a movie that you're like, holy shit, this is intense. Like it's some of the most intense gore you'll ever see until you see Terrifier 2. And it's done, I believe it was sub $100,000. I'm not 100% sure on that. I wanted to say it was like
I
$80,000,
think it was like
which is like
$75,000. I think it was right around that
yeah, it
mark.
was like
Yeah.
nothing. It really was nothing. And by the way, I mean, there's no story to speak of, but very effective gore, like very effective. It's like, oh yeah, let's just take the very thin plot out of a slasher anyway, and just start slashing people. And
And
they did it, and it was effective.
and $75 to $80,000 in like 2019 or whatever that movie was made. I can't remember the exact year it was made. That is basically like $16,000 in 1982 or whenever they made.
Because it's all going to the effects anyway.
Yeah, that in 2019 money, that's no money. $75,000 is a pittance for a film. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
like when you had Kevin Smith used $28,000 to make Clerks in 1993. You know what I mean? That's more than 20 years after that, and $75,000 is nothing. So yeah, I just again story. No one's gonna tell you the story's great in that one, but the effects, damn, like they really did pull it off for the effects of that movie for having no money.
Absolutely.
All right, let's talk about one of my favorite categories that we've kind of added onto the show recently, and that is can we survive this horror film? Now, Patrick, I'll be honest. My family, little do you know this about me, most of my family, I come from a family where most of the branches of my family fall in one of two categories: criminals or cops. Most of my family either went and they worked in like the prison system, or I had some not so great family members that did some bad things. But yes, I did have a lot of cops in my family, so there is a world where I would have actually become a cop. I didn't, obviously, but there is a world where I would have followed in my family's footsteps and actually become a police officer. So this one actually can relate to me. So last shift, you and I are in Officer Lauren's shoes by ourselves, by the way. Are we?
Oh, we can't team up on this one.
No, we are not teaming up on this one. There is no teaming up on this one. You are by yourself in that decommissioned police station. Are you surviving the last shift, Patrick?
Well, part of me wants to say hell yes, because the minute the bum starts pissing, I go, you know what? Fuck this shit. I'm not even cleaning up piss. So here's your badge. I quit. I don't give a goddamn. Like that part of me goes, yeah, I'd totally survive. But let's pretend like I power through that part of it. Maybe not. Hallucination, Damon. I don't know. When you don't know if you're off your rocker or not. And I'm certainly like, hey, these are ghouls. Cool. I'll just start shooting them. I mean, then I am definitely a target for what will eventually be the cops showing up going, holy shit, there is a guy just shooting hazmat guys in here. He's getting one through the head. Like this, it's very likely that's going to happen because once you enter into hallucination, I could try to use all the logic I want. It doesn't matter. I'm hallucinating. I don't know what's going on. I don't have control over my faculties. I think there's a very likely that you're going to end up with the tragic ending for Officer Patrick.
So you are a family man, wife, kids. You are you're a very respectful guy these days, Patrick. But let me ask you this question on a personal level. Have you ever done hallucinatory drugs in your entire lifetime?
Oh, yes.
Okay. I wanted to ask that because I have as well. So I know
Damon,
it's like
I've seen Dormammu from Doctor Strange. I've seen him personally. I was like, oh, I know Dormammu. I've met him before.
Yeah. Okay. So I've been there too. Okay. I want to make sure we were on the same level here. So I understand on a different level when you hallucinate how weird and how real things get. Okay. Like it is really out
real.
there.
You're like, I've really been dead for 1,000 years. That's crazy.
Yeah. Okay. So I just want to make sure we're on the same level here because I have too, and it was one of the multiple weird experiences in my life of where I've been in hallucinatory situations. So on that regard, I'm glad we can share. Here's how I say I survived this, Patrick. On two things I will say I survived. One, again, I'm not a person, I don't believe in ghosts. I just don't. But like weird shit starts happening. I'm very much like Eddie Murphy, the comedian skit that he does back in the 80s about the Amityville Horror. When he's like the differences between white families and black families, he's like we would walk in the house and they'd be like, "Get out! Too bad we can't stay, baby," and they just leave. That's like there's a moment in this movie where, because at one time Officer Lauren gets basically locked inside, like she shoots at the window and it just does nothing, and that's where you start to realize like she's
Right.
not seeing reality and you're hanging out with Dormammu. Um, but there's a couple times where she goes outside, like she walks outside the building, like it's just a door. She walks outside, she goes to her car, she goes out the back door and runs into a prostitute. Like she's out. If this weird stuff starts, I can sit here and say I don't believe in ghosts all I want. This weird, really creepy stuff starts happening. I'll watch the decommissioned police station from outside. I ain't staying
Yeah.
inside. I'm not going back in there. I'll watch for my car because guess what? You're telling me no one's going to be in there anyways. No one should be calling. Well, guess what? I'll wait for my car and I'll watch from there. The place that sets on fire, I'll call the police department. Or I'll call the fire department. I ain't going back in there. So in that regard, I say I would survive because even though I consider and say I don't believe in this, I don't believe in this, and whatever, the second things get really, really weird, I would be like, you know what? I'm gonna wait in my car. And that's the end of it. So yes, I think I would survive because I would not stay in that bitch. I would not be in that police station. I would 100% be the guy who says, "Get out! Oh, too bad we can't stay. I'm gone, gone."
Yeah, I mean, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I wouldn't even have gotten to the hallucination stage. It's bum piss stage. At bum piss stage, I'm out. I'm like, I'm not fucking dealing with bum piss. Hey,
like,
chief, I'm out.
Yeah, I'll play the role of dutiful police officer. Realize that when you're a police officer, you deal with a lot of really nasty things. So I'll deal with that because that's just part of the job. I'll deal with that. But when you start like chasing me down the hallway with body bags and creatures elevating with nothing, nope, I'm just gone. Like the last time she got out of the last time she got out of the building would be the last time I'd walk out of that building. I'd be like, all right, I'm waiting my car. Because
they would have been a short film.
Her car was parked outside. She could see in. She could see if anyone went to the door.
I almost want to say, wasn't there a point where she was like, I'm just gonna like stay in my car. Like I feel like she told the guy on the phone.
Yeah.
She was like, I'm just gonna wait in my car, and then she couldn't get. Then it was too late.
Yeah.
She'd had many opportunities to just stay in her car.
Yeah, I would just.
But by the way, you know, I'm fine with that choice. But yeah.
For the choice of the movie, obviously it would end the movie.
Yeah.
Like, all right, I'm over, and 45 minutes in, the movie's over, and there's nothing else. But for me personally, I would not. I do not care about this building back. You've told me no one's coming, no one's calling, nothing should happen the entire night. I'm just waiting for the hazmat crew. Well, guess what? I could wait for them outside. When they show up, I'll be out here waiting. I will sleep in my car with my cell phone on me. If you need me, call.
If you need me, I'm on my phone. I'm flipping through Instagram. I'm flipping through Twitter. Yep. That's it. I'm not dealing with no payment family haunting my police station.
So I am 100% surviving this because I ain't gonna be in there. That's what I'm saying. Our last category before we get to the close, and of course this is a two-part episode. We're going to do Malum in next week's episode, so it's kind of like a two-parter. We're going to do the remake. So our last two categories, the first one is, what would we like to see in the remake? So obviously we know the remake is coming, Patrick. We know it's happening. Yep. It's being released, so we know it's coming. So, and again, we've already talked about the unique circumstances where they're literally remaking this film. Reimagining is what they're calling it. They're not calling it a remake, right. Reimagining, because it is different, but the premise is similar. So what would you like to see in the remake? If we're going to remake the same film, what would you like to see in the remake?
I'll be honest with you. What I would love to see in the remake is more genuine reaction out of Officer Jessica. I just found it it was the one thing that I walked away from this movie going, I still don't know that I can accept how she would see something. Like we just finished talking about how the minute I see something fucked up, fuck you, I'm out of here. Sorry, baby, we can't stay. Like it makes total sense. But she would see something insane and then like almost go directly back to business. I don't know if that was a choice. I don't know if that was just DeBlasi and the actress sort of working that out, or she made the choices and he didn't really change it. I don't know. I don't even want to speculate. I just know that what it was in the end result to me was so strange. So I'm assuming with a bigger budget, we'll be able to see her react to the things that are happening and allow the movie to escalate that way. Because at the first sign of something weird, like in the holding cell with the flashlight thing, that should be the first sign. It's like, oh, fuck, I'm in real trouble here. and then just keep that note rising and rising and rising as things happen. That is truly the one thing I want to see, because I could say I want to see a better police station, I could say I want to see bigger gore, but the truth be told, they showed me right here with their very little low budget that they could do a lot. So I'm skipping all that and just saying I want to see the character of Officer Jessica react to these things in a way that at least makes sense.
So I totally understand where you're coming from, and if there was a criticism of that, it is that, because we talked about how everything escalates each step in this movie, and one of the things they do really well is that they escalate the horror from step one to step two. They don't skip steps, and you feel like by the time you reach the ending, you've really ratcheted up the terror that she's experienced throughout the course of this film. And some of the reactions do seem muted, almost like where she just
Yeah,
she
very good
does
word.
something and then just gets right back to work, and it's kind of weird. One thing you pointed out that you're not going to nitpick about is what I'm actually going to nitpick about, which is the location. I said at the beginning this film felt like it was shot in an office building, and a very one, like, it's a one hallway office building with like doors to each side. It all
Mm-hmm.
felt very self-contained. It almost felt too small. And like it just didn't. I understand. Like I didn't find out till after the fact. They shot it in an old police, so it was a police station. It just didn't look like it. It looked like an office building. It was so well lit from the overhead hanging neon lights that it was just so well lit that it was just like it was a little too light, if that makes sense.
Oh no,
Too lit
you're
and
yes.
and it didn't feel like a police station. So that would be probably my biggest issue, or going in now that you got more money. I would hope that you would shoot in a better location with like better effects in that, because this is supposed to be a dirty, dingy, rundown, beaten up old police station. It should look like that. And this didn't really look what it really looked like is when you hear about a building, when you hear about a business going out of business and they file for bankruptcy and everyone comes in and they like do like the liquidation sale, and they sell
Yeah.
off the file cabinets and the chairs and things like that. That's what it felt like. It didn't feel like this building was old and dilapidated and had been, around for 50 years and it's just completely out of whack and we just need to get rid of it. It just felt like it had been like they fell into disrepair and they were selling off the office shares. I want to see a building. One of my favorite all-time self-contained horror films that I absolutely love, and I cannot wait for the day we review it on this podcast, is a film called Session 9, which takes place
Mm-hmm.
in an old mental institution, which actually existed, where they shot it in Colorado. It was a real place. And boy, oh boy, when you see the inside of this place, it looks like an old, rundown, beat up mental institution. It's terrifying. Um, that's the one thing I would say I had an issue with. Even though I love the scares and I love the effects and I love what they did, less is more, all those things I've praised this film for. The one thing that didn't work was the location. It did not look like what they're telling me it was. Like, you're telling me it's an old decommissioned police station and it's just being shut down for a more state of the art, better place down the road. It didn't look like that. It just looked like an office building where they ran out of money and they're like, well, we got to sell the file cabinets.
I will agree on one part, which is the lighting. They're stark white walls, and I did read something with Anthony DeBlasi where he said, "Yeah, listen, it's a cinematographer's nightmare to shoot with all white walls, and I can relate to that as a filmmaker. Like I will literally just say this location is not going to work because it's just all white walls, and that's ugly, and it does not look good on film. It just doesn't." So that kind of bothered me because it was pretty much all white and it was very bright. It was kind of like too bright. The whole place was like overly lit almost, and that looked kind of weird. So I would like to see better cinematography, more shadow play, more contrast, and more shadows in Malum. But oh gosh, I almost lost my train. I think I lost my train of thought there. There was something to have to do with the location, but either way, I do agree with you with that aspect of it. I would like to see that. Oh, what I was going to say was the location didn't necessarily bother me because in these small desert towns out here in Southern California, I've been in those police stations. It's exactly what they look like. So that didn't throw me the way it threw you because you were probably expecting to see something different. It literally, like, part of me was like, did they shoot this in Victorville? Did they shoot this in Hesperia? Because these are these little towns out here in the middle of the desert, and you go into a police station there is exactly what those police stations look like. So it didn't throw me at all. But I can understand why you're like, yeah, this doesn't. I don't feel like I'm in a police station, and it didn't feel like it was run down, decommissioned, and busted out. It just looked really lame. But again, I still stand by, and I think you agree with me too. They did a lot with a little, and that's why people need to check this movie out.
Is there another podcast we need to do about why you know what all the inside of police stations look like in all these towns in California? Because now I'm
No, we
really
don't.
curious.
No comment whatsoever. Had nothing to do with mushrooms and seeing Dormammu and living 1,000 lives. No, nothing to do with any of that.
I'm really. There's a whole other podcast. Why Patrick has seen the inside of so many random small desert town California hills. I mean, that's the whole story we haven't explored yet. So
Nothing to do with any of that.
We're gonna go true crime on this podcast now and explain.
Oh, we really want to blow up. Then we should go to true crime.
All right, our last category, of course, as it always is it scary? So, Patrick, at the end of the day, last shift, is it scary?
Yeah, man. It's scary in a great way, in a fun way. I mean, no, I wasn't like shaking in my boots, but that's why I came up with best chill instead of best scare. Every little thing got under my skin. I was like, damn, that's a cool way to subvert my expectations. That's a cool way for me to not see what was coming. I dug it, man. And from the body to the body being dragged to the holding cell to the Payman family, they did a lot of things right. And to make a good scary movie, to make what you're looking for in a scary movie, you're gonna love. And I had my perfect litmus test with me. I had my wife. She was scared out of her fucking mind. Like most of the movie, she was terrified. And I was like, it's definitely working on her, and it's already kind of working on me in its own different way. So yeah, 100%. Last Shift is scary.
It is. It's 100% scary. It works really well. I can count on like 20 occasions in the past decade where I've watched a film and there's moments where I have to kind of like look down a little bit because I know something's coming, but I don't know what's coming. So I'm not hiding my eyes, but I'm kind of like, oh man, here it comes. One example I remember seeing in the theater. I was in Texas, in Austin, Texas, and I saw Hereditary in this small little dinky one-horse town theater, very small theater. No, I was in Chicago. I'm sorry, I was in Chicago. And it was a little local neighborhood theater, like to the point where it looked like an old Rialto theater where like they had like the old popcorn and like not wooden chairs, but like one step up from wooden chairs. That's how old this theater was. But there was a couple moments in Hereditary where I was kind of like, what's going on here? Like something bad's happening. That got me with this film a couple times, man. That holding cell scene, a couple of scenes later in the film, and then the executions at the end. Yeah, it's tremendously well done, and it is scary, and it works really, really well, and it's claustrophobic, and it works. It works. The effects work, the story works, the execution of the performances work, and yeah, it's a scary film. Like I was genuinely impressed for a low budget film, for a very low budget film. This film worked.
Oh yeah, no, it did. I'm kind of pumped and excited because I hope that it gives some of our listeners a reason to discover this movie like we did. Like holy shit! Like there's this tiny little low budget horror film that I knew nothing about. I know it has its cult following, and a couple of our listeners are going to be like, "Ha, I've been on Last Shift. Where you been, motherfuckers?" Well, that's cool, but I'm like still stoked because it's like this was a little diamond in the rough.
Yeah, 100%. All right. As a reminder, this is part one of a two-part episode. Next week, we are actually going to dive into the remake, or reimagining, if you will, of Last Shift with the new film just released in theaters called Malum. It is by the same team, which is, again, very kind of different, bizarre set of circumstances. Now they have a different production company called Welcome Villain. They're actually getting a bigger budget, and they're redoing it in a way that they kind of felt like maybe they could have done the first time if they had more money. But it's the same creative team, so the choices they're making, that's their choices. This isn't some other creative team remaking Last Shift and say, we can make a better version. No, this is the same people, Anthony DeBlasi, Scott Polley, all the same people, coming back with more money and making a new film called Malum. So we will talk about Malum next week. So stay tuned for that. And if you haven't seen Last Shift, as we mentioned, go check it out on Peacock or Tubi. Watch it. And Malum is currently in theaters, so we're going to review that next week. Obviously, as always, we want to say thank you To everyone that tunes in each and every week to the show, make sure you check us out on all of your favorite podcast platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and of course we have our own YouTube channel now. Please search us out, Rewind to the Living Dead. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are really trying to build that up, so please, please, please subscribe to that and watch the episodes over there. And you can actually see our lovely faces as we talk about our movies. Also, if you have questions, comments, movies you'd like us to review, please hit us up anytime on social media. Search us out on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Just search Rewind of the Living Dead. You'll find us over there. We post weekly, all the episodes and everything like that. So make sure you hit us up on there if you have questions, comments, movies you'd like us to review. And you can also hit us up on email at rotlivingdead@gmail.com. That's rot. livingdead@gmail.com. And you can also find us on our own personal social media channels. I am at Damon Martin, and you are?
At Director Patrick.
I want to say a big thank you, as always, to everyone that tunes into the show. Make sure you come back for part 2 of this special 2-part episode as we review Malum in the next episode of Rewind to the Living Dead. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you then.
Peace.